let's move on to the topic that y'all have been waiting for. The hottest, spiciest topic in Apex Legends right now is roster mania, the crazy domino effect that has resulted from ImperialHal making the decision to leave his longtime team in TSM and join up with the God Squad in Dark Zero. Super team indeed. Let's go ahead and start it
Pooper
right
team.
away with a super. You call it super team? Is that what you call it, Hassan?
I said Pooper team.
Pooper team with a P, not an S. This is the change. Shot to Chrono, sick graphics, photoshopping some heads. Very well done. Hal joins Dark Zero. We all know about this, but we have to talk about it. They haven't necessarily been the super team you'd expect them to be, dominating every single scrim. They've faced some adversity. Do you think that is a call for caution, or just the natural growing pains of joining a new team, and especially with Hal figuring things out with Zero? Snap, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, you can't just the ceiling for this team is through the roof in terms of what it is. The expectations are also directly paralleled to those, what everyone's expecting. I think Sikes fit his role very well on that team, and they broke records at LAN. They broke records in Pro League. They had over 100 points, separating them between the second best team during group stages. So, like, you're transitioning Sikes and Hal, which I think is like relatively paralleled in terms of skill. Hal just brings a lot of extra, every accomplishment that he's had. And I don't think I'm expecting much different from that Dark Zero team than what I was already expecting them to do with Sikes, to be completely honest. So I think the expectations are higher than anything else. And I think there's definitely going to be some growing pains. And I was enjoying, I think, the first rage, like real rage I heard out of them in scrims the other day. So the content is going to be there, the spiciness is going to be there, and it's exciting as a fan to watch this and kind of just watch where every individual ends up going. Both Sikes with LG, and then Evan and Jordan, and just to kind of see all the routes that these players take.
Super interesting take. So Snipedown says he doesn't think their ceiling with Hal is much higher or higher at all than it was with Sikes. I want to confirm that was your take there, Snipe.
I think it's higher than it was with Sikes to an extent, but I also think the floor might be even a little lower just because of how personalities might mix. I think Sikes just kind of accepted everything, and we've never seen Hal be yelled at before. We've never seen, and Zero's not afraid to take that role, and kind of put him in his place, and he's going to argue, and Hal's going to argue back, and so we're very curious to see how that's going to come down, and that's where the content's going to come in. And just for me, like, I mean, that's going to be fun for me to watch. I think that's going to be fun for all the fans to watch. But yeah, I think that's going to be the biggest thing that people look out for, to maybe break some cohesion in the roster, or it could make them that much better and they could win everything. But I think winning everything in a BR is already tough. So I think if anything, it made the competition maybe a little better all around, because you're taking two of the best teams that, are the two teams that were only won events before this, and you're putting them together to make one team, where the individual player difference, I don't think is that crazy, but you're spreading out the talent around to every other team.
Yeah, and I want to get Jayhawk and Designful Stakes for sure. But speaking of Sikes, yeah, we actually have a graphic of really an awesome tweet. I gained a lot of respect for him for this, giving his flowers to Hal and even to Zero and Jen Burton. Thanks for the opportunity to team with y'all. Did a lot of really cool stuff. Got close to winning second place. They looked great. Hal's literally the only player in the game that I understand getting replaced for, and I hold no anger towards them whatsoever. Wishing them the best. So an awesome tweet for Sikes. I got a lot of respect for Sikes. Jayhawk, you actually tweeted minus one event that we will forever leave nameless. Some of Sikes' accolades and his accomplishments, which are arguably amongst the best or top 5 of any player on LAN. Do you agree with Snipe? Do you think that with Sikes, their ceiling wasn't necessarily much lower than it is with Hal? And what's your overall take on this team?
I 100% agree. I mean, the expectations for that DZ team was they were going to win LAN. Like, they were placed first in Pro League. They were dominant throughout scrims all the time leading up to it. They had the record-setting group stage. Like, it wasn't even close. Like, they literally looked miles above every single team. In winner's bracket, they placed 4th. I mean, they didn't have the greatest of sets, but still, like, a solid performance. And then in finals, they honestly had the first chance to win. Like, that game 7, they were right there. And they very well could have came away lifting the trophy. So adding Hal, like, obviously, I do think he's probably the better player, but in terms of the actual expectations, it was already that they were going to win. It was already that they were supposed to be the best team in the world. All I think it's done is it's made it that much more unacceptable for the fans and for themselves, and that regard, if they lose. Like, winning is what they should be doing. If they lose, they're going to get clowned on a lot more because they're the super team. It's what happened, with LeBron and the Heat when they lost to the Mavericks. Everybody thought it was hilarious that the super team went out and lost. And if that happens to this team, yeah, I think in terms of expectations and the ceiling, I think it's pretty similar because Sikes is cold. Like, he's so good.
Absolutely.
Design, you'll get the final word on this specific topic, and we'll move on with a pointed question towards you. Is Hal still the CEO if he's now taking orders from somebody else?
Ooh, I don't know. Maybe that means like Zero's a CEO. I don't know, but realistically though, I mean, on paper, Hal is like the best player, and he makes really good decisions. But Zero's style of IGLing is kind of, he'll put the team in some tough positions. Like he'll be like, "Hey, we're gonna play here, and we need to win this fucking fight. We need to kill this team," and like it's just him putting. It's the same way I do it. Like you have to shoot your way out of an uncomfortable position, and I think Dark Zero was better with like a Zainu or a Sikes, where they were capable of making their own decisions, but for the most part they were like listening to Zero. I think Hal will make his own decisions, but sometimes it'll be like completely like not according to like the team or what Zero had in mind. And I think the younger moldable fraggers is definitely better for Zero, but I mean, we'll just see how it plays out. I don't know.
I think there was a big equity shift within the Apex scene and maybe a hostile takeover of the CEO position with this team coming together just due to the fact that Zero's the IGL of that roster. And I have so much love for Hal, and I've known him for a long time, and I think that this is in the end going to be a very good thing for him in his moral. He has he's talked about other IGLs that he'd be comfortable letting him, and the list was sweet. That was basically it at the beginning of the game. And to give up his IGL, because I know it stressed him out a ton. He talked about just the pressures of being an IGL, and not that ever got to him. He's won multiple events, but having two teammates that put in, Hal has had, I am the grind. Like, he puts in hours and hours and hours, and now he has two teammates that put in just as many hours, if not more than him, into their own mechanical training. Zero and Jen Burton have proven that they're two of the best, if not the best, players in the game, especially the best duo in the game, in my opinion, and they have been for a while. And being paired with teammates that are willing to put in the same work as you without you having to give the commands, and you're listening to someone you respect, I think that that's where their potential truly lies. And maybe we could see even a better form of Hal as a player than we've seen in the past without him having to think that much. So there's a huge upside to this, but then there's also the when it goes wrong, things are always great when things are great. And you're really put to the test when things aren't. So it'll be curious when you have so many explosive personalities with him and Zero, if there ever is times where it comes to are we doubting or whatnot.
I've already seen spots where Zero goes down, and if you were with like Sikes, he would have been like, fucking res me right now, and like it's been like he goes down and he's like, hey, can you res me, Jen or Hal one of you guys can one of you guys come over here and res me? It's like, we'll have to see how the dynamic plays out. They can iron that out before Pro League and everything, but I mean, they don't have that much time. They don't have much time before Pro League, and then it's going to all snowball. So if they could figure it out before Pro League, they could snowball it into World Cup and then the next playoffs. But if they can't, it could be a fucking train that gets derailed. So we'll have to see.
And the summary there is truly all eyes on Hal. I think, again, respect to him for making the decision, because he definitely put a lot of thought. I mean, weeks and weeks went into this decision. As y'all know, this is one of the worst kept secrets among the pro community. But he put a lot of thought into it, and he knew what he was signing up for, and the amount of pressure he is adding to himself, and the fact that he walked towards that pressure and embraced that pressure says a lot about him. And all eyes are going to be on him. If his team does not do well, it's clearly going to be pointed back to him, because they did do well. They got second place. They were the most dominant team at that event with Sikes. It's going to be an interesting story to watch unfold for sure. And I got to agree with you. I think there's a lot of opportunity for them to continue to improve. Hal was supposed to come to Chicago this weekend with Snipe and people. We were going to have a Memorial Day weekend in Chicago. He's like, sorry, boys, can't do it. Got to scrim. Got to stay locked in for Pro League. So that's how you know he's taking this serious. It's his birthday coming up. They're going to celebrate with some good friends, and he declined. So he's locked in. We'll see how things turn out. But let's shift on now. As a result of that decision, we call it the ImperialHal domino effect. We actually have a cheeky graphic for y'all. Kudos to Chrono Creative for putting this one together. The domino effect that followed Hal's decision. We're going to walk through each of them. Again, we're running a little short on time, so I don't want to spend a ton of time on each and every single graphic. We'll go fairly quick here. But first it was Hal, then it was Sikes, of course, going to LG, then it was Slayer being replaced off LG, and then you see that handsome man Designful who's thrown in the mix. Wait, he's still undisguised. Was he involved? Oh yes, he was. He got dropped by TSM. No, I'm just kidding.
That guy's kind of hot.
Design scrims with TSM, considers joining the fray and shaking things up. Opted not to, and you'll see the follow on from there, including folks like Shuby, dropped, knocked, and the like. Let's walk through each of them. First things first, LG, they pick up Sikes, they drop Slayers. Hey, Jayhawk, I'm gonna get one take from each of you just to save time. Jayhawk, I want you to take this one. Think it's a net increase for this team picking up Sikes over Slayers, or a net decrease? And why?
I think it's great. Sikes is one of the best controller players in the world. The thing I'm really excited about is I love Sikes comms, and I think that one of the big things that a lot of people have criticized Sweet for is that obviously he's a very micro-heavy IGL. I don't think he has to micro Sikes. Sikes has played with IGLs who don't want to micro you. Like Zero can, Nock can, but I've talked to Nocturnal. He does not want to play with people that he has to do that for. So Sikes coming into Pro League, that was his entrance. I don't want to micro you. You got to figure it out. He's played Fragger. He's played Anchor, so he can play multiple roles. I think this is a fantastic pickup and should elevate LG to a true contender on LAN.
Briefly said, great summary. Excited to see how this roster develops. It's going to be a fun one. Keep an eye out. By the way, shout out to Slayer, the most hilarious individual on Apex Twitter. I'm going to keep saying it so everyone knows it. Follow Slayer Season on Twitter.
Hot, sexy spray tans.
I was about to say.
Yeah, the sweet spray tan was nuts.
Those are my 3 words for that.
Right the day after the spray tan, or right after he got out. Like, there's no shot. Or he just looks darker because he's next to Funk, who looks super pale in that photo too.
He's looking good. Sweet's looking good with the spray tan. Maybe it's natural. Who knows? Let's move on to the next topic. And we mentioned one person per graphic. You already know who we have to go to this one. The next graphic is Team Solo Mid, TSM. Zap reportedly joining this team. By reportedly, we mean they're quote unquote trialing, but things are going pretty well. So you think it's going to be done and locked here in the near term. And Talmadge as the coach of this team, of course, as well. Design. I want the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Not the political answer. Not that you're scared to hurt your friend's feelings answer. Why didn't you continue trialing with this team?
So, like my whole story has always been like, proving people wrong, whatever, blah, 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 fucking proving myself. And I thought that would be like a good step, that'd be kind of cool to do because I do love Jordan. I do love Evan, and we've talked about it in the past. Like, I wanted Evan right when he swapped over. Jordan, the couple times of like rough times of TSM when they there was like rumors of them splitting up. I've always talked to him. And so we were like, you know what? We got to try it. Like I told Enemy and Timmy, like when we were talking about like shit we would leave for. And that was the only scenario. It was if Hal were to step down and I would go take that spot on TSM and play with Evan and Jordan.
Months in advance, so you were very upfront.
I thought from the very beginning we teamed because like they talked about different scenarios as well. They gave me a bunch of different scenarios and I told them that was the only one ever. And so I did it with them. It actually went pretty, like the results didn't show that well, but it was like the way that I play the game, it's like we're taking one fight and we're either winning the game or losing the game. And after like one day, like the first day it was kind of ass, and the second day, one day of like practice, TDMing and shit, like it felt really good. And we could have easily won that day of scrims. And it all came down to like roles and stuff though, because I don't really play like the same aggressive role as Hal. It's kind of like I do need someone else that's going to be even more aggressive than me. And Evan didn't really like he could have went into that role, but he doesn't really play that role right now. Whereas like Timmy and Enemy do, and I've already built up so much synergy with them that I saw we all saw the potential. Me, Jordan, like Evan, we saw the potential, and we were going to do it. And like we were all on board to do it, but like realistically, timeline wise, like with stuff coming up for them and with how much I've already put, like that video came out and like really made me like appreciate like everything I've done with like Timmy and Enemy and like being one fight away twice now. Well, like somebody came in my chat and said that like, yo, dude, you've been 2 Apex fights away from $1 million. And I'm like, thanks, bro.
Yeah.
It's felt so good to like build it with them that like I thought it would like look like at least I was being a little selfish and like because sometimes you have to do that in esports. And like it would have been so sick if I went over there and I won with them. But at the same time, no matter how sick it would have been if I would join Evan and Jordan and won with them, it'll be just as fucking sick with what me and Enemy and Timmy have built. And I fucking love those boys to death. We have so much fucking synergy and chemistry, and like we've butt heads so many times. Like there's been times where me and Timmy literally are about to fist fight, and like every time we like just yell at each other, say some crazy shit, and then we go scrim and fucking dub. And they've definitely grown on me, and I've grown on them, and they've taught me a lot and helped me a lot as a player. And yeah, it would be just as cool to win with them as if I joined TSM and did it with them.
Last
That
question,
ended
wrap
up
this one
being like
up.
I was saying
What?
that exact same thing. I was saying that about you. I was like, I think you're better off. Like, obviously, TSM it's lucrative, but I think you have something really good with your current squad, and that's a synergy that you don't build overnight. Like, you guys obviously had to struggle and sweat and not do well and build that up. I mean, you guys had a rough start to last event, and you guys came out and worked your way all the way back up and killed it
Yeah.
in the end, and we're right in that same position where the previous land. So that's
Last thought.
It's like
and then
on
also one
paper
person-
they look
Oh, sorry.
crazy. I was just gonna say it's like every team is gonna go through those struggles, and like you're always gonna like think about like different opportunities and shit and like that, and like you will never know what you had until you like don't have it anymore. And like I didn't want this to be like one of those scenarios, because I do know I have a really good thing, the boys.
yeah, you got Pathfinder.
Yeah,
and
yeah, we're gonna
Wraith
have to
on
figure that
team, you
one
guys
out.
should
We're
do
gonna have
Don't
to
do
figure
it.
that one out.
Don't do it.
Yeah, it'll be great. Design final word on this. It's been. I want to get your take on your situation, but making it less about you transitioning to Zap and the arc of really Verholst emerging as kind of the IGL of this team. Do you think Verholst has what it takes to IGL, and do you think Zap is the right pickup for them?
I think Evan and Jordan have played under Hal for so long, and they understand the game on such a level, and like they both have the ability. Like I don't think one of them should IGL. I think they should always bounce it back and forth. Like
Oh, IGL.
just fill that like they should have it like kind of how like me and Timmy have it, where like they decide one person has last say, but with how much information both of them have, they can just bounce it back and forth. And I told them that their best case scenario would be to pick up like a really good Bloodhound player to fill Hal's shoes or some fragger role where they both guide that person. And like I thought Zap would Zap or Lux is who I recommended to them when I was when I finished trialing with them. So it's nice to see that they not only got Zap, but they got a coach now too, which they were also looking for.
I think Talmadge fits their play style well. It's gonna be exciting to watch that team develop and their continued trajectory. Can they still be a top relevant team, top 3 team without Hal? We'll find out. In the transition of them moving to co-IGL roles will be interesting as well. Transitioning now, speaking of Talmadge and Zap leaving E8, it's been a wild journey. Snipe, you've been a part of this journey with E8. Noct was playing with E8 for quite some time, and then Zap, of course, left and joined TSM. Let's talk through E8 and their trajectory. And now, of course, where things ended up, picking up Luxford and picking up Slayers as well.
Yeah, I mean, this whole situation is pretty confusing. It just seemed like, I think there was some talks of orgs playing together with Dropped and Noct, and then Noct got the offer with the org to Zach's team, and so that kind of pulled. Like Noct is obviously going to be enticed by that with the EWC spot. Shubi got basically dropped. That became a huge public thing, and then it was just kind of a rotation of EWC roster locks, which is where I got pulled into the team with Shubi and Dropped, because Dropped was then without a team after Noct left, and then Shubi got dropped, so it was them, and it was just kind of pairing of I guess convenience in a sense. And then after the whole situation, Noct needed a team again, and I talked with Shubi and Dropped, and it was a super cool conversation. I completely understood. Like, there was not much time from roster locks to scrims to everything where we could get enough cohesion as a roster. And playing Dropped and Noct playing together just made sense, as they had that history. Shubi could fill a certain role. And that's where that team ended up together. And I think they're going to be a great team. That basically Optic roster with Shubi in place of Skittle. And, I think we have a lot of interesting teams that come out of this. Zach is now with Slayer and Luxford. I think that's also a very strong roster. And it's just, I think it kind of sucks. I wish that original EA roster could have just stuck around, because I think they were a very good team. And I think it could have been, mended. They could have found an org, could have found a home. And I think that they had something going. It just seems like, I don't really know what went down
Did
there.
you
There's a lot
really
of behind
expect
the
that
scenes
though?
stuff.
Like,
Dude, I thought
Zach
they
has
were
a
good enough to stick
history.
together.
Zach has a history of every time he has something good, he breaks it. Remember Noct?
Yeah, I mean, I thought that was hilarious that he
He's
went
always
back and
looking
went
for an
back to
upgrade.
Noct. I was
That's
like,
for
bro, imagine this is like making up for the whole situation in the first place of dropping Noct and being like, yo, we got something here. I know you're looking for a team. I got you back. I told you I would, and then it just implodes again. I don't know. It's just It was unnecessary. Hopefully every team's good, but it sucks rebuilding when you already had something. Come for me. I know.
Yeah, it's a crazy whirlwind. Shout out to Clara at work for the detective work and the most amazing paint diagram that laid this all out brilliantly
Yeah.
and super concisely for all of us for what his journey has been. Let's transition now over to the next team. And this one, of course, is going to be a fun discussion. It's Space Station Gaming. The pickup of Koifel. Frex goes to Oxygen. It's replaced by Koifel, and now we have a little young goon squad, god squad of their own with Phony, Zainu, and Koifel. Before we jump in and get Snipes' take on some of this and talk through some of the madness of the last couple of days, Jayhawk, want to get your take on this roster. What do you think their ceiling is?
Winning LAN. Koifel's insane. Like, you get the opportunity to pick up Koifel. You know, Frex is an amazing player. Love Frex, but Koifel's nuts. Zainu, he's won a LAN before. One of the best controller players in the world. I actually think he's kind of somewhat become a little underrated. Like, people don't
I
realize
agree.
how good he still is on this SSG roster. And then you got Phony, a top IGL. So, yeah, I think this team is certainly capable of winning LAN.
I never fully understood the, slightly different topic, the Zainu getting dropped from Dark Zero and picked up for Sikes. I never fully understood that. Did you have, I agree with you. I think that decision, he became underrated somehow. Do you have any thoughts on that, Joe?
The public statement was that they mutually agreed to part ways. I have no clue as to why. I thought, obviously, it was a great team. Maybe it could have been because at Champs they missed finals. But I have literally no clue why.
I still
They've
don't
never
think that was
commented on it
Zainu's
since.
fault.
No, it definitely
Think it was
wasn't.
Zainu's fault?
I just don't know if
I
that
still
was
don't.
why. I have no clue.
But I think the nail in the coffin is what caused it to break was them not qualing, but I don't think it was Zainu's fault, unfortunately. And I know a little bit of behind the scenes stuff, but I mean, I guess they just cut it off. I don't know, because Zainu always was like complaining with like being yelled at. Zainu's mental, definitely can't take the like he doesn't like getting yelled at by like feeling like that Slayer or like that Sikes role that he had on that team or like the Slayer role on LG, and that's kind of what like Zainu was kind of falling into a little bit on that Dark Zero squad before Sikes was there.
That was a good clarification to both of you, Design and Jayhawk, because definitely not dropped, mutually parting ways. There's some additional thoughts that it wasn't Zion's fault. There's way more than meets the eye in that topic of conversation. But obviously, both landed very very well. They picked up Sikes and they've done very well since. Zainu joins his SSG roster. They've shown moments of brilliance. Now with Koifel, the sky is absolutely the limit. I agree that is their ceiling. You summarized it really well.
Except when there's a bank smoke, they're gonna get folded. Fucking controller players.
Squad.
Somebody send Fnatic on their ass. Or reject.
Last thing on that note, I think the community would come at me with pitchforks if I didn't have a chance to give Snipedown a moment to speak to some of the crazy last 48 hours of controversy with what was the former FaZe Clan roster and the situation of making that phone call to Phony, considering and throwing out an option of picking up Koifel, all of that to come back and spite you with what was kind of the best team you've had since TSM and Apex. Any final thoughts you have on that situation, Snip?
I mean, I've said this before. I've talked about this enough on stream and talked about this whole situation. I'm not gonna use this to I've talked a lot as a community member of not like dogpiling onto people. And I don't want that to happen with anyone in my community or like at all for someone that, obviously made an emotionally charged tweet because of a lot of the feedback that he's getting, and I think that this is just a product of the situation. And I think that there's a lot of like different accountabilities that can be taken on this. And I'm always open to having that conversation, to talking about, with him or if he wants to talk to me like on stream, whatever it is, to get his side of the story. So it's not just me, which I don't think it has been. I've just been detailed in my side of the story. So I don't want to, spark anything, but all I'm saying is at the end of the day,
He'll take his
our
date.
best placements as competitors have been together. And regardless of the situation with them dropping Frex, me getting dropped due to bringing something up that, was a private conversation that, I didn't think was going to get back to him. I didn't know that it did get back to him. His best placements are with me. And, I'm not saying that I was the reason. We obviously just had something good as a unit. A team is a product of the whole team. And even if they do better than we did with Koifel, hey, I'm saying I threw out that idea first, so I can be the winner no matter what. If you do better without me, you're picking up the player I said. And if you don't, then, I guess that's another dub. But I think that's going to be a great team no matter what. They're obviously one of the top hitters, and people are calling them a super team, a god squad, and I think that it would be disappointing if they don't place at least what we did, if not better, on a consistent basis for sure, especially in Pro League.
Speaking of Frex, it's a good segue. It's awesome to see, look, despite all the craziness of what went down, everyone's kind of landed in a healthy way. Frex joins his Oxygen roster. He was trialing for a while based on their performance in EWC. I think it might be well cemented. They're looking pretty solid. Jayhawk, quick thought on this team, his Oxygen roster with Frex on it.
I love the addition because I've got to talk to Auction a lot, and I've always kind of heard their consistent problem was roles and fits on certain characters, and I feel like this easily defines it because I once talked to Vayne, and he said the solution to all their problems was always to put Aiden on Horizon, and now they can do that. Aiden can be the fragger, they can run free, Frex can be the anchor, and I'm excited to see what this Auction roster can do because you add Frex, very experienced. I think he can help support Vayne when it comes to some of that co-IGLing that Reeds did. So yeah, I think this is a really good pickup for Oxygen.
I like it. I'm excited to see where Reeds lands as well, because I think you're right. Maybe it wasn't the right fit for the play style of the team, but I think Reeds is still a nasty player. Excited to see where he ends up falling, and that obviously shakes things up quite a bit as well. And with that said, look, obviously this is North American time zone and mostly North American audience, but we had to give some recognition to EMEA and some coverage for EMEA as well. So let's cover Europe, Middle East, and Africa as well as a region. First things first, Salute. Big roster change that came through, and I'll run through these pretty quickly just to keep up on time. Some of y'all may have heard, may have not. Nags leaves this team, and now as a sub, as a pickup coming through, Zane returns to this team after taking a split break, and this is the new Salute roster of Nasky, Amphi, and Zane as a result of Nags. Speaking of Nags, where did he go? Why did he leave? Who in the world would he leave Salute for? Well, kind of a remarkable underdog story team that came in, grinded through Challenger Circuit. A lot of people saying Arctic and Cinetic are next up on this team. That's first two you see on your screen. And of course, Nags joining this team, bringing all types of experience. He's been competing for a long time. It's really going to be a fun thing to watch. Made in Heaven, fourth place in Pro League last split. Didn't have a great land finish. I think they placed in the 30s. But now picking up Nags, I think it's going to be a really, really good fit. I know there was a little bit of controversy around Taxington getting replaced from this team. I think he said he was blindsided on Twitter, but nonetheless, you got to keep an eye out on this Made in Heaven squad. That's the EMEA kind of roundup of quick roster changes as well. Want to also kind of wrap up with some additional teams that I think we'd certainly be remiss to not talk about. I tweeted about it today. If you have not heard the news, Native Gaming signs a brand new roster, and it's a fun one. The return of RKN after a brief hiatus. I think the word retirement was thrown around a little bit. He got himself a 9-to-5 and said, well, I kind of miss playing Apex on the side. He joins back with Rambo after the great run that they had and their come up on Torrent. And of course, playing together on Sentinels before some of the drama that unfolded with Rambo briefly retiring and then joining Dark Zero as a sub. That's going to be a really fun team to watch. They pick up McLovin as well. So I want to give someone a chance to give a thought on that Native squad, either Jayhawk or Design. Design, we'll come to you because we got a thought from Jayhawk last. Your thought on that Native team and pick up McLovin. Do you think they got what it takes?
I think McLovin is definitely an underrated player. He's pretty good, and I think Rambo and Arcan synergy is probably the best out of like the teammates that they've had. They've been through a lot of rosters, and they ended up doing the best together. So I think they can make it work, and we'll have to see how it plays out. But I think yeah, those two players do have a really good synergy, and we'll have to see if Cole can, if he still's got the Twitter fingers, the mechanics. So we'll see. Maybe he'll just bust out the crypto. Who knows?
He's a dad now. He might be taking the backseat to the
Right?
throne, huh?
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good summary. For those that don't know, McLovin grinded through Challenger Circuit, then played in Pro League for a few splits, and was on BTC, was on Noxious, I believe, with the Vexies at some time. Really, really big fan of this new Native squad. I love the pickup. I gave some flowers and respect to the Native CEO and their GM today for some of the pickups. Really, really solid pickups across the board. I actually just got word Deranged Natives in chat. Shout out to the CEO of this team, Deranged Native. Excited to see what that team can do. The last team we want to wrap up with in ROSTERMANIA. Last team, I said, and we're going to wrap up with a person. You might know who that is Xset or Xset. I know how you like to say it. I'm going to be honest. I'll start with this one. I was a bit skeptical of this team. Look, Reptar hasn't competed at a top level in a long time. He's been sharing for a while. He thinks he still can. For those that don't know, he was on Complexity years ago. I mean, years plural, when they've dominated in the early Bloodhound meta. Him making a return after being a content creator, saying, I want to get back to competing, switching to controller. I wasn't sure if that was the right pickup for this team. They could have had their pick of the litter, in my opinion, as a former Pro League split #1 team, dominant team, top 5 finish at LAN in the past. So Jack, I want to get your take. They dominate and look really, really solid. They dominate. They look really, really good. First place overall in the EWC qualifier, and they're going to be going to Saudi Arabia. I think this team has what it takes with Reptar. I think that's the right pickup, to be honest.
I do. I mean, I'm also biased because I've been historically a huge believer in this Xset roster. Like, yes, they missed lane with Koiful, and I know in terms of like expectations, that was crazy disappointing. But I do think that Nocturnal and Fun, I posted about Sikes on Twitter. I mentioned the 9 players that have placed top 5 on LAN 3 times. Those are 2 of them right there. And getting to talk to Hodsik at LAN too, because he's going to stay with the team as a coach. I think one of the things they were really looking for in a pickup was somebody who's very experienced, and there doesn't have to be any teaching of the game. There doesn't have to be any micro, because like I talked about earlier, Nocturnal doesn't really like to micro. I think he would self-admit he's also not really the greatest at it. So getting someone that can just kind of hold their own, and they're also really good friends. So they already have established chemistry. So although it doesn't look like the sexiest pickup on paper, they got the sexiest pickup on paper last with Koiful, and they weren't able to make it work. So maybe you just got to change it up and go a different direction. And at least so far it has.
Nailed it. Any other takes? Any other thoughts on that roster?
I mean, I agree with the vibes completely. I think Nocturnal is going to work best with the people that he's the most comfortable with. I think we've seen that before, and if I think he's admitted to it. Like, there's a lot of emotionally charged times that he's been affected, and I think if he has a team with people that he cares about, I think him and Reptar might even be living together or did live together at one point. They're just good friends, and they can have a good time with scrims, not as much pressure leading up to it, and hopefully that can carry over because they did very well in the split, and they've been scrimming well together as well.
I think the one word you mentioned that's spot on is vibes. I think Nocturnal performs at his best when he's playing with his friends, when he's having fun. And I think that was the difference, maybe what wasn't there with Koiful perhaps. And I think it's certainly going to be there with one of his close friends in Reptar. So I'm excited. Again, I have to eat my words. I think I never even said any words. These are just thoughts. I have to eat my thoughts. I wasn't sure what the Reptar pickup would look like. Scrims were looking kind of hit or miss at times, and they performed. They showed up, and they showed what they're capable of. I'm excited to see what they can do in Pro League now against 18 or 8 or 9 other top pro teams in North America that didn't play in those qualifiers for EWC. Only time will tell next week. We'll be talking Pro League predictions here in a little bit. When we wrap up this ROSTERMANIA conversation, one person I thought maybe would join or maybe it could be a good fit for that Xset roster was right next to me on this screen. Snipedown, want to hear your thoughts on your future. What's your status? What's your situation going into Split 1 Pro League and beyond?
Yeah, I mean, I reached out to that Xset roster and, talked to them, and they told me that their main thing going into EWC quals was just vibes because there's not enough time to really practice and do the nitty gritty. And, that decision worked out for them. I think that was obviously the right decision. For me, I've made, I've thrown together teams last minute for some Pro League splits before and didn't really have, great results. And I always, kind of prided myself in my mentality on like, I'm going to compete for the right reasons to win and know that I can win and put in the work and all that. And if I'm not doing that, I'm not here to just collect a salary or a check or anything. I can spend my time doing something else. And as of right now, I have no plans to continue into this next pro league. I mean, I do have some options that are viable, but I'm not 100%. If I'm not 100% mentally at it, then I don't think it's fair for me or my teammates to do that. I'm really going to take time to focus on things like this after hours and content and some other personal ventures that I'm really excited to take. It's what I went to college for, marketing, entrepreneurship. And I think that I have a support group and a lot of people, and it's hard to do both with 1 foot in, 1 foot out. I'm not quitting. Like, I'm not retiring. I think if something opens and it's down the road and I'm going to be playing and keeping up my skills and all that, then that's great. But I'm not just going to throw an org at someone and be like, yo, let's just run it back together. Like, screw it. I'm not here to do that. But at the same time, FaZe needs to field a roster, and I've been close with them. They've done wonders by me, and I promised I will absolutely do whatever I can to field them as good of a roster as I possibly can. So, if I'm not on it, I want to build something great and help support it. So, regardless of where I end up, that's what you got.
One of the greatest to ever do it in esports history, hands down in the Esports Hall of Fame with your career across multiple titles, Halo, multi champion, X Games gold medalist, X Games silver medalist in Apex, but not using the word retire, which is good to hear. So it sounds like the future is still unknown. Appreciate the overview of where things are at. With that in mind, one last kind of point in this topic, we didn't include this team's name because they weren't part of ROSTERMANIA. They stayed loyal to each other. It was the Tripods. You talked about helping FaZe field the best possible roster. Do you think FaZe to Tripods is a viable thing? A lot of people are talking about it on Twitter.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be great. FaZe is already represented at EWC with the Counter-Strike team, and I think even another team. And I think FaZe would be absolutely interested in that roster. They've worked with them before, and if I'm not gonna field a team, they're backing me 100% and whatever I want to do. And they've, like I said, that they've been so loyal to me. And I have nothing but respect for FaZe and will defend them when anyone talks poorly about it based on my own experience. So I want to do right by them, and I think if they could field a roster for that's 1 in Pro League and 2 at the EWC, then that's a win-win. And I would love to see them back representing tripods.
Damn. You heard it from Snipe himself, an endorsement from Snipe, currently signed by and working with FaZe, longtime FaZe member for FaZe and tripods. We'll see if that comes to fruition, but certainly they've been performing. They qualified for EWC. And speaking of qualifying for EWC, let's transition topics here to the Esports World Cup